So, look, you wrote an op-ed about why Trump is right to rein in all of this reckless spending. Let's take a look at what you wrote here. Here are the inconvenient facts. Our nation is $36.2 trillion in debt. We are borrowing around $70,000 per second. Although that number was around $100,000 per second a year ago, that's nearly $6 billion borrowed each day. It's hard to even fathom that we are borrowing $6 billion per day. Carefully reviewing our spending is reasonable and what taxpayers should expect. You know, Congressman, this is what I don't get. Even the Democrats acknowledge that we've got to cut spending. So why are they pitching an all-out hissy fit here?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, too many times they talk about that we should be looking at spending and looking at opportunities to balance the budget. But when it actually comes time to make some of those tough decisions, they won't do that. I mean, we heard the same thing yesterday in our Ways and Means hearing that members were talking about how terrible it was that the Department of Government Efficiency that was set up in the Obama administration to find opportunities for digital services and improvements. We just heard over and over again why they shouldn't be looking at ways where there's waste and fraud and abuse. And we're hearing the same thing today in our budget reconciliation committee meeting. So I think it really is some of those hard political decisions that we're trying to make, particularly now that we have Republican majorities in the House and the Senate and a Republican like Donald Trump in the White House.
Again, Congressman, I think it's just hard for the average American to understand why we're spending so much money overseas on things like sex change operations in Guatemala when you've got military veterans here in this country that are sometimes waiting weeks or, in some cases, months just to get medical treatment.
Yeah, it really is a shame. I mean, you look at one of the reasons why the Department of Government Efficiency went and looked at USAID was because it's a big pot of money and a lot of dollars were being spent out there. And when you look at instance after instance where spending $1 million on a Sesame Street program in Iraq or DEI programs in Burma, I mean, those aren't things that advance American interest or American causes or freedom and independence for individuals in those countries. And so we've got to make sure that we're smart and we're prudent in terms of the money we do spend. We should have a limited government, but we want to make sure that we're efficient in terms of what we do.
You know, Congressman, I got to go back to day one. President Trump said those egg prices, grocery prices were going to come down, and they're not down yet. And now the Democrats are using that, and the media is using that to target you guys on the Republican side of the aisle. How long will it take, do you estimate, for prices to start coming down?
Yeah, I think one of the things we need to make sure as we look at the inflation numbers that were reported today is those were numbers that were calculated in January. The last week of January is where those numbers were compiled, which basically meant it was through the 20th of January when President Biden was still in office was over 75% of the period of that month. So obviously it takes time. Inflation's really sticky. Once it gets in place, it's tough to unravel. And that's why it's so important that we start now with so many things like we have with the Department of Government Efficiency, the things we're doing in the House and the Senate to focus on budget reconciliation and making sure that we don't have a tax increase so that we can help make sure that the economy keeps going forward and we can help get that inflation down. So back to where it was when President Trump was in office in his first term.
And Congressman, real quick before we let you go, any updates on that terrible commuter plane crash that killed so many people, that plane bound from Wichita to Washington, D.C.? Are you guys getting any additional intel on what happened?
Yeah, that really was a sad instance and a tragedy for so many folks, not just in Wichita, but in pockets throughout the country. You know, we're getting information, we're getting updates. I do have to compliment the National Transportation Safety Board and the Army and the airports and American Airlines for the processes that they put in place to help go through that and to work with the families and to sort through not just the grief that the families are feeling, but also let's make sure that we get information around what really happened so that we can keep that from happening again. And so even though this was a tragedy situation, we want to learn from it and make sure that we don't have to go through this again.